Welcome to the Granite Belt, Queensland. Here we are on a beautiful autumn day at Sutton's Juice Factory and Cider Shed Cafe. And we're here today to tell you a little bit more about the Granite Belt, and then I'll tell you about Sutton's products as well as make an apple pie so that you can learn how to make our famous apple pie. First of all, the Granite Belt, Queensland is about 2.5 hours from Brisbane. It's an easy drive, a lovely drive up through Cunningham's Gap, and then you come to the Granite Belt, which is an area of about, 30 kilometres long. On the Granite Belt we have lots of things for families as well as couples to do. There's any number of award-winning wineries. We have a cidery right here. We have cheese factories, we have jam factories. We even have a Christmas tree farm of all things, which has a lovely range of animals. There's someone else who's specialising in making leather goods. So when you visit the Granite Belt, you can visit lots and lots of different places. Along with that, we have our national parks. We're quite renowned for the beautiful Girrawheen National Park, as well as Sundown National Park and Bald Rock not far away. So there's lots of natural places to visit as well as attractions and wineries. So we are here at Sutton's, and at Sutton's we're a juice factory, we're a cidery, we're a cafe, and today is a beautiful autumn day, as you can see. In the background you can see some beautiful medlar trees showing their golden colour at the moment, and where all the trees are going into dormancy. So at Sutton's we're all about apples. We're based on an apple orchard. We make everything in relation to apples. We're all about making apple juice. Our apple juice is made to variety. It has no preservatives, got no additives. It's absolutely 100% pure. We have different varieties. Today, just here in front of me, I have Royal Gala apple juice, which is made out of the Royal Gala apples. Now, apples ripen between early February and the end of May. Royal Gala apples actually ripen in February. So we've just made this apple juice when they ripened. The apple juice does keep for up to 2 years because we gently pasteurise it here, and that way we're able to keep it without adding preservatives. We also do cloudy apple juice. We crush the apples up to make this one, and this particular one is made out of Granny Smith apples. We have a number of varieties of apple juice as well. As well as these, we have a Pink Lady apple juice, a Fuji apple juice, Sundowner apple juice, Jonathan apple juice. And then when there's other fruit available on the Granite Belt, we will add that to the apple juice. So we make things like apple juice with strawberry, apple juice with peach, apple juice with plum, and so on. All natural, with nothing added to them. Then what are we going to do with apple juice? We can do other things with it. So we can take apple juice and we can actually ferment it. So what you do is you take just pressed apple juice and then let it naturally ferment, and what happens is the sugars in the apple juice, which are at around 16% in the apple, actually convert into alcohol. So those sugars convert into a cider. Cider is simply an alcohol made from apple juice, and it ends up at about 8% alcohol. These are natural ciders. Sometimes we use wild yeast, other times we use other kinds of yeast. Our ciders are made sometimes out of cider apples, sometimes we use dessert apples. They're quite different actually, and it's very nice if you can put a mixture of the two together. So once we've got apple juice made, we've fermented it into cider, as in this Pink Lady apple cider that I'm holding here. We can actually do something else with the cider. We can actually ferment that and change the alcohol into an acid. And what we do is we make an apple cider vinegar. And the apple cider vinegar is where we convert the alcohol in the cider to the acid in the vinegar. The vinegar actually has a mother of vinegar in it, and the mother of vinegar is actually a cellulose. And what happens is that cellulose, it keeps growing because there's an enzyme in there. And many people take a dose of apple cider vinegar every day for their gut and to keep the gut healthy. So it's one of those products that is very popular with people who like to maintain good health. That's just 3 of the things we do with the apple juice. There's one other thing that we do with the apple juice, and that is we actually make an apple syrup out of it. How do we do that? We take apple juice, we put it in a great big cooker, and we slowly evaporate the moisture off, and we concentrate the apple juice by 10 times its volume. So what you do is you end up with a syrup that is really just concentrated apple juice. Has a fabulous, very fresh flavour. It's not terribly sweet, but it has lots of body in it. And it is absolutely pure, 100% apple juice. Because here at Sutton's, we actually focus on preservative, additive free. We like everything to be as natural as possible. We also use other fruits and vegetables from the Granite Belt. The Granite Belt is noted for being able to grow lots of fruit, lots of vegetables, really a wide variety of fruit and vegetables, and they're available here on the Granite Belt. There's a number of roadside stalls where you can buy those, or they go down to the markets in Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane. It is a region that really is quite diverse. On the Granite Belt you have lots of wineries, a diverse range of wine grapes are grown, and so there's lots of wineries where you can go and visit and try any number of kinds of wines. We grow lots of fruit as well as the grapes. We grow strawberries. Strawberries are grown during our summer months. Then we grow stone fruit, and then we have, of course, all the apples which we use here in our products. Vegetables are grown here as well, and there's very large acreages of vegetables grown. We grow lots of brassica, lots of lettuce, lots of celery, and so on. So as you can see, it's a diverse region and a very good region to visit because you can experience a diverse range of activities that we have available. What we do at Sutton's is we very often purchase fruit from other orchards, vegetables from other orchards, and we make preserves. Very often with apple added to those other products. So I've just got a couple here for you to have a look at. This one is actually an apple jelly. It's an old-fashioned preserve. Lots of people know it because it is an old-fashioned preserve. We actually drip the juice out of the apples, then we turn it into a jelly, which is really just a jam. It's not really like the jelly you have for your dessert. Then we take something like apple and we buy local strawberries. Many strawberries are grown here on the Granite Belt, and we do apple and strawberry jam, for instance. The apple is a product that actually goes well with other fruits and other vegetables because it carries the flavour of those other fruit and vegetables really well. Another product we've got here is where we take something from our garden. We grow lots of herbs in our cafe garden. We use those in lots of the products that we make for our cafe or for our preserves. And this one that I've got here is an apple and mint jelly. So the apple jelly carries that mint flavour really well. Perfect with your lamb, of course. And again, just to the west of here, we have the Trap Rock country where lots of beautiful lambs are grown. Behind me you can see the golden leaves of the medlar tree. Medlars something Australians aren't really that familiar with, but certainly in Europe and certainly in the British Isles, lots of people are familiar with a medlar, and we make products out of the medlar. Here I've actually got a medlar syrup, which has a beautiful, delicate flavour. And about to go on our shelves at Sutton's in the shop is a medlar liqueur. Has a beautiful, delicate flavour.
So, Roz, what makes Sutton's apple pies the best?
Oh yes, Sutton's apple pies. Lots of people like Sutton's apple pies. I think it really is because they're a handmade product. We cook the apple, we make the pastry, and we build it and make the whole apple pie. Nothing is bought in, and all the products we use are pure products that are preservative and additive free.
And what goes better with apple pie, fresh cream or ice cream?
Oh well, at Sutton's we like to think both go so well with apple pie, so we use pure cream with nothing added, which we whip up and serve with our apple pie along with a lovely ice cream. In fact, we serve our apple pie here with a spiced cider ice cream, which is made for us to our recipe. And so we actually send this cider, this apple cider goes down to Brisbane to the people who own the factory. They make the cider ice cream for us and then send it back to us. That goes beautifully. If you don't have that, and of course you probably won't have that, a lovely vanilla bean ice cream is just as good.
Now, Roz, what is your preference type of apple? What do you make the pies with?
Aha, lots of people ask that question. What apples do I make apple pie with? Well, from February through till May, I tend to use whatever apple is in season, you know, fresh from the tree. So I can walk out the back of our cafe and pick the apples off the tree and cook them and make the apple pie. I have some apples in front of me here, beautiful Granite Belt apples, and there are a number of varieties here. For instance, I have a jazz apple, an envy, I've got a pink lady apple, but interestingly, I also have a Granny Smith apple. Doesn't matter what size apples you use for your apple pie, they all taste the same, doesn't matter what they look like. I actually don't use Granny Smith apples. People are really surprised by that because it's what we grow up with. Our mothers all made apple pie from Granny Smith apples. Why don't I use those? Well, when we cook them up, they tend to go to mush. And in a moment, when I make this apple pie, you'll see that I actually like to build the apple up in the pie so that I have a nice deep dish apple pie. If I use these Granny Smith apples, the apples will be mushy and they won't hold the shape in the actual apple pie. Hence, I use any of these other apples. All of them make beautiful apple pie. All of them hold their shape. So when we cook the apples, and we cook a lot of apples at a time so we can be ready to make lots of apple pie, we cook it, and as you can see, the pieces hold their shape. We cut them up. We actually use an apple peeler and it slices the apples up for us. So the apples are peeled and sliced, and that's how we cook them. We just cook them just enough. We don't want them too cooked, otherwise they'll be mushy. And so we end up with lots of pieces like this. When I make the apple pie, I actually mash some of the apple up so that in between the pieces of apple, I've actually got mushy apple, and that kind of fills the pie and fills all the gaps between the pieces. And then my pie will hold together. If I use those Granny Smith apples, it'd be just mushy. So that's what we like to do. We like to just have those pieces. So in our pie we end up with a mix of pieces and the mushy bits in between that holds it sort of together. Now, what do we do when we cook the apple? Well, we adjust our flavourings, or our supporting flavourings, I guess, during the season. Early apples tend to be a little bit underripe and actually not as full of flavour. Now, what you can do is you can actually add some lemon rind, or lemon juice if you like. You can add a little bit of sugar. We don't add very much at all actually. We like the apple to just retain its flavour and not be overwhelmed. So we can add a bit of sugar, we can add a bit of lemon rind, and also just a very small amount of cinnamon. We find that cinnamon actually helps to boost the flavour of the apple. And we just adjust depending on the variety of apple that we're using at the time. In the off season, what do we do for apples? We actually purchase those from other growers who are able to store them in some controlled atmosphere storage. They come up really well out of storage, and so that's what we tend to do in the off season.
So Roz, if you didn't have apples at home, what other fruit could you use to make a pie?
Well, I would probably still have a few apples, and so I would then add another fruit. I might add apricots. On Sutton's farm here we do have some apricot trees. We also grow rhubarb and so on. I would mix it with the apples. The other thing I would do would be maybe take some peaches or apricots and simply make a peach pie. The pastry we use is still suitable. I might make an apricot pie. I mention those fruits because we actually grow them here and they grow well on the Granite Belt.
Fantastic, Roz. And could you show us your process for making an apple pie? Where do you start?
Oh, where do we start? We actually start by making the pastry. And people ask us, what kind of pastry do you use? Well, here I have some pastry that we've made, and it is simply, you can see it's quite flexible, holding together. This is just a sweet short crust pastry. It's just an ordinary old recipe that Grandma would have used. What we've done is we've upscaled it because we need a lot of pastry here, and we make it in bulk. But really it just contains butter. We use unsalted butter. We use free-range egg. We use flours, sugar. That's all that's involved in making the pastry. You can make your pastry ahead of time. What we've done is make this ahead of time and we freeze it. It freezes really well. So that's not a problem. So if you haven't got time to finish making your pie, make the pastry and then freeze it. How do I make it? Well, I still like to use these old Pyrex dishes. They've been around forever and ever. We give it a bit of a spray so that the pastry doesn't stick to it. And then I take my pastry. We actually cut our pastry out in circles ready to go. So I know this is going to be the right size, but that doesn't matter. You can trim it. I push the pastry in, just push it down. Now, I don't want my pastry to be soggy in my apple pie. So what do? I actually take some of Sutton's apricot jam and I'll spread about, well, that's about dessert spoon, tablespoon of jam. I'll spread that around the base of the pie, just like that, and so on, so it's covered the base. I use apricot jam mainly because we have apricots and we make it. You might have plum jam, something that is a flavour that works well with apple. I probably wouldn't use a strong flavoured jam, but it's up to the individual taste. So I've used some jam. What do I do then? I've mushed up some of my apple and I'm going to put lots of it in. So here we go, we've got a whole lot of apple in here. Halfway through I tend to flatten that down because I don't want my slices of apple pie to fall apart as we go. So you can see I'm just flattening it down. I've got some mushy bits in between. And then I keep going. And so I will just keep adding the apple. And you can see there that it's starting to build up. I like a nice high apple pie. That's up to the individual taste. But this is, at the moment I'm using no I'm not, I'm using Pink Lady apple. I'm getting confused here. And so once I've got it, you know, roughly how I'd like it, I'm actually going to press it down. I like the back of a spoon. You can use your hands. Doesn't really matter. So here we go. And as you can see, it's all quite high. That's how I like it. I think it looks fairly impressive. Once I've done that and I've smoothed it off and I'm happy, what I do then is get my other circle of pastry that we've really pre-prepared. You can see when I freeze it, I freeze several pieces of pastry at a time, and I just put baking paper in between. It won't stick. And so then I've got my circle for the lid, and I'm just going to press it down all the way around. You'll see what I'm doing. I'm actually tucking the pastry down so that the lid is glued to the base pastry. I actually want a seal there, so I've actually made almost like a gutter around there. And so once I've done that, I can trim it off. So I've got a knife. I might just run around and trim it off depending on how much extra pastry there is. You do need enough left there to seal. So trimming off just that excess. You don't want too much pastry around the edge. Once I've done that, I actually like a nice crimped edge. It looks quite nice, rather than just leaving it like that. It's not very exciting, is it? So, with my 2 fingers and 1, I'm going to push the edge in. I actually don't want that edge to stick to the base or the dish. It's too difficult to get out. So if you push that edge in, you won't have problem getting your slice out. So very quickly, just round you go, pushing that edge in. Get a nice neat edge, looks good. Then what do we do? I've actually got some egg white here. I've beaten it up. You don't want it too thick. And so I'm going to brush it with some egg white. Just all over. And once I've done that, I'm going to take some sugar. I'm using Demerara sugar. You might prefer a white sugar. We like this one. It adds a bit of crunch actually. So, and what I do then is I simply go around, sprinkle the sugar on, just like that. If it's too thick, you might find that the moisture in the atmosphere after you cook it makes the pastry go a bit soggy. You don't want that to happen. So,
and how thick do you make your pastry?
Oh, yes, the pastry's not too thick, but remember, you want it thick enough so that when you get the slice out, it just doesn't all fall apart. Too thick, it's too much pastry to eat. So I'm not sure what that would be, but you know, about that thick. Yes, so as you can see, it's not too thick really. You don't want a whole lot. And then what I do is I like to put a little steam vent in the top. So I just make a V and just push that in. That tends to stop the pastry lid from lifting too much from the steam as it cooks. So there we have it. Your apple pie ready to go. Now that'll probably take about 23, 24 apples. I know it sounds a lot, but if you want a nice high dish apple pie, it'll take that many.
what you love about the Southern Queensland country region.
Oh, Southern Queensland country, how good is it? We have 4 climates, no that's correct, 4 seasons in the year I should say. Currently we're enjoying the cooler autumn days. In winter we get those fabulous big white frosts on the ground, we get a chance to wear our warm clothes. Then in spring the blossom is beautiful. If you want to see the blossom on the stone fruit trees, you'll see that around August is the time you'll see that. The apples then flower about the end of September, early October. So then in summertime it's not too hot. So if you're in Brisbane or you're in North Queensland where it is really hot and you would like to escape, come to the Granite Belt. It's not that hot. Fabulous seasons.
And Roz, someone's asking, back to the apple pie.
Yes.
How long do you cook them for and to what temperature?
Oh, okay. A pie this big, I would cook for about 1 hour, 10 minutes, about 75 minutes. And the temperature will depend a little bit on your oven. My oven is a commercial oven that we cook these in. We cook it at 175. So somewhere between 170 and 180 degrees, depending on your oven. A hot oven, you'll go down a little bit in temperature, or if it's a cool oven, you'll go up a little bit in it.
And how would you serve it, Roz? Once it's been cooked and ready to go, how would you serve it up?
Okay, so I've got one here I prepared earlier, so I'll just show you what we do. Okay, here's the apple pie, just out of the oven. And as you can see, once you cook it, you get, you know, this lovely crispy pastry on the top. That sugar makes it quite crunchy. It can be a little bit tricky to cut, but I'll try. So, we simply serve it here at Sutton's by cutting a pie this size. We'll cut into 8, but it'll be enough for 10 or 12 people.
Roz, and someone's asking, do you add water to the apples when cooking?
Not necessarily. Early in the season, new season apples will have a little bit more water. If the season, if we've had a lot of rain, the apples won't need much water. We can add a little bit, but you know, for the last 2 years here on the Granite Belt, we've had drought, so apples actually are a little bit dry and we add a little bit more, but really very, very little. And I'm sure someone will bring me some ice cream to show you what we do, and some cream. And so here at Sutton's, you will, we serve a slice of apple pie this size. Let's hope it comes out in one piece. Aha, there we are. So there's our slice of apple pie, which we serve like that. I like to give it a dusting of icing sugar. So here's a little dusting of icing sugar, just makes it look nice really. So we put some icing sugar on it. That's what your pie will look like inside. You can see how it holds together because I've got a mix of pieces and some sort of mushy apple. You can see that it'll hold together, and you can cut nice wedges as you're serving it. It does come up a little bit nicer. And then what we serve it with is our cider ice cream. It just goes beautifully with it, and I'm sure my helper here has come with some ice cream and some cream. Thank you. And so this is our cider ice cream. We'll pop that on, and then the other thing we like to serve it with is pure cream. We don't do anything to the cream, just put it in one of these gas bottles, whatever you call them. not sure what they are, and a nice swirl of pure cream. And then we take Sutton's apple syrup. Goes beautifully on that cream. And so I just drizzle some over that. Goes well with the apple pie. Well, thank you very much for visiting the Granite Belt with me today and for visiting Sutton's Juice Factory and Cidery. We look forward to welcoming you here on the Granite Belt, just 2.5 hours from Brisbane, and a fabulous place to visit.